Yeah, thanks everybody for coming out. I see a lot of our customers in the audience, so that's great. I'm Austin, the CEO of Rinsed, the car wash CRM. So we plug into your existing point of sale system. We integrate with all the top 5 car wash specific point of sales and give you tools to help manage and grow your membership. As part of Rinsed, we're 5 years old now. This is our 5th car wash show, and we're installed at over 2,500 locations around the country and see over 7.5 million underlying members for those locations. So we see a lot of data, and we want to talk today about what are some of the differences we see in the really high-performing washes with 5,000 plus members versus the rest, and how, with little improvements in blocking and tackling and focusing on the right things, you can make sure your wash ends up in that 5,000 plus bucket. So first, why 5,000? I think if I had given this presentation a few years ago, we probably would have said 3,000 or 4,000, but the ceiling continues to be raised in the car wash industry. And across all those locations we see, we're seeing 5,000 as a very achievable number. And we think that when you get to that kind of member count, it really gives your business both profitability, predictability, and defensibility. And I think that defensible point has become increasingly important over the last few years as we see new entrants. There's no greater defense for someone building a wash a mile down the road from you than already having 5,000 happy members. And just as far as that number specifically and how that means you'll stack up. So every quarter we publish our Rinsed industry quarterly data. And this is some information around the member counts that we see in mature sites. So a mature site here has been in operation for at least 30 months. So you can see the 75th percentile is over 4,000 members, and the 90th percentile is almost 6,500. So I want to suggest that 5,000 is very achievable and is really where you should aim for when launching a wash today. And 5,000 is not the ceiling either. So when we look at these car washes that are already at 5,000 members, we actually see that they're still growing 9.4% year over year same store sales, as compared to those smaller washes, which are only growing about 4%. So despite already being at 5,000 members, they're actually growing faster than the rest of the industry. So I think that suggests that by doing these small things right, you're going to have this compounding advantage to your business, and these top performing washes are actually growing significantly faster than the rest of the industry. So before I get into this sort of aggregated data across the 2,500 washes, I want to look at a really specific example, because going into this, when we were working on this presentation, we thought, well, what if some washes are just, they're just better from the outset. They're in a better location, they have more opportunities, better populations. Like, can we really compare these two things? And of course, all those things matter, but I think we have some really good evidence to suggest that, this washes that might look exactly the same at the outset. So here's 2 washes that had similar population and actually had similar traffic patterns. Over the course of the last 2 years, they had a similar number of opportunities measured by how many non-members came through that they could potentially convert to membership. And they started in roughly similar places. So they were both mature washes. One had 900 members, one had 1,200. But when we fast forward to today, they're in very different places. So one is at just over 5,000 members, and the other's at 2,600. So while 2,600 is respectable, that 5,000 member location, significantly more profitable, predictable, and defensible. And so when we zoom back out to see what are the differences across all the locations that we serve, we want to make sure that you're doing the right things to end up in that bottom bucket. So there's really 5 things we identified, 4 of which are very much in your control day to day, and the 5th one, you can kind of control about your next wash. So those are churn, conversion rate, speed of service, sales presence or whether your lanes are attended, and then the actual regional density of your wash footprint. So I want to start with churn. So this was pretty striking to us. When we looked at car washes that had less than 5,000 members, they were averaging 10% churn. And those with more than 5,000 had about 34% lower churn. So another way to think about this is the ones with less than 5,000 each month, they were losing almost 50% more customers. So these folks had to run a lot faster in order to get the same kind of gains. So, Rinst actually started primarily focused on churn because, if you don't seal that leaky bucket, then it's going to be really hard to build a sustainable business. So churn we break down into 2 pieces, both voluntary and involuntary. Voluntary means, when someone is going and actually just wants to quit, and involuntary is when their credit card declines and then you're not able to keep them as an active member. So here we can see, credit card churn was significantly lower for those 5,000 plus. Best practices around this are using, a tool like Rinst to identify when someone's card is not going to charge, to message them and give them a really seamless way to update their payment information. All of this, though, is also dependent on collecting that information at the time of sale. So if you don't have any customer contact information, you're almost certainly going to end up on this left bucket here, because when their customer's credit card declines, you have no way to reach back out to them and make sure you give them an easy way to remain a member. Voluntary churn told a similar story where the lower performing washes were at 6%, and then the 5,000 plus, we saw 4% voluntary churn. One of the things we've seen be most effective in reducing voluntary churn is meeting the customer at the time that they're going to quit and potentially offering them a lower price to stay in the plan. So we'll often put a form on your website, and then when the customer fills it out, we're going to look up that member's history and potentially offer them a lower price depending on their usage. If they're an Uber driver, we might let them go. If they're someone who's washing consistently less than 2 times a month, there's almost certainly a price where we can keep that person profitably. And that's what we've seen a lot of success with. The second sort of pillar of this is conversion rate. So if churn is the bottom of the funnel and how many customers you're losing, conversion rate is really about taking advantage of every opportunity you get in the driveway. So as I mentioned, in that tale of 2 washes, they actually had similar number of opportunities in the driveway. So it wasn't traffic that was the difference between why one ended up at 2,500 members and the other was 5,000 plus. It was really about conversion. And we see huge variation in this. Under 5,000 members, we're seeing 6% conversion. Over 5,000, the average here is 9.4. But we see some customers that are consistently achieving 15, 20, even 25% conversion rates in the driveway. And this is probably, the one metric operationally that if I had, everyone at the wash on a day-to-day basis looking at one thing, it'd be this in terms of holding folks accountable. But conversion rate is just a number, and there's actual inputs to it that are going to be what you change day to day. And conversion rate, we actually like to break down into a few things. So one would be, is there actually a salesperson in the lane? The other would be, are they pitching every customer? And then what's that individual salesperson's performance? So, we used to look at this on kind of a monthly basis. Then we started looking at daily, now intraday, every hour. Can we let people know when they're not tracking well on conversion rate? And now we're increasingly seeing that be looked at on a real-time basis with our salespeople. So Rinst recently acquired a business called Ignite Wash. They're out in Innovation Alley, but they really fill this gap of giving you a real-time view for every salesperson. Are they pitching every car, and what's the conversion rate there? So moving that accountability all the way down to the salesperson level and being able to view it in real time, we've seen to be really powerful. Speed of service has been a differentiator for the high volume and low volume washes. So here we're seeing just what is your kind of peak speed. So we looked at what's the max cars per hour we would see on a busy Saturday across those locations that had more than 5,000 or less than 5,000 members. So I think it's kind of a requisite to having a really high membership count is, if you're going to have 5,000 members, you need to be able to support 100 plus cars an hour on a busy Saturday. Otherwise, there's just going to be too much of a line and those people are going to go elsewhere. So to deliver that, fast, convenient product, this is really, table stakes. And then I mentioned it briefly, the sales presence, but just how this showed up in the data. Historically, Rinse has only had so much visibility into this conversion. We could report on it on an hourly basis, but we didn't necessarily know what was actually going on in the driveway. Is there just an XPT and they're letting the customer self-serve, or is there an attendant there who's actually trying to make that pitch, explain the benefits of membership? And what we see is that the car washes that increase their staffing and have humans in the driveway are performing significantly better from a conversion rate perspective. So this is looking at the labor hours per location, and we see that those high volume washes were staffing at a much higher level. So about 36% higher in terms of labor hours. And this really translates to just more sales attendants in the driveway to make sure that every opportunity is going to have a person there who can try to make that membership sale. Because we see a huge difference in conversion rate from attended to unattended lanes. And then the last point I wanted to touch on was just the power of regional density. And this isn't something that you can go home and change tomorrow, but as you're thinking about really like building your business to have multiple locations with 5,000 plus members and defensibility for the long term, we've seen this be a really important tool. So what we did here is we looked at for locations where, for customers where they had multiple locations in an area, what was the impact when customers would actually wash at multiple locations? I think it's been hard historically to get data on this. People would kind of pitch to the customer that there's this network benefit. You can come to any of our washes, but we didn't really know whether it affected retention. And when we dug into the data, it turns out it has a huge effect. So the green line there is looking at retention when somebody only goes to one of your washes. All the way up to the purple line is when they go to 2, 3, or 4 of your washes. So you can see 12 months in, a customer is about twice as likely to still be a member if they're going to multiple of your washes. So again, not something you can change tomorrow, but one, by promoting the benefits of your network and letting your existing customers know when you open a new location, but two, thinking about how do you build into your existing footprint and the power that has from a defensibility perspective. Because that new entrant in your market, they're only going to have that one location, and if you have really a network that bolsters you today, I think that's something to think about for the long term. So yeah, those are the areas that we think every wash that has a reasonable amount of volume should be thinking about 5,000 members as that bogey to hit. It's churn, conversion rate, speed of service, having attended lanes, and then can you really leverage your regional density to make those memberships even stickier and more valuable to your customers. But we're excited to work with more car washes and help them all get to 5,000 plus members. So with that, I think we have a little bit of time for questions.
We do. Hey, Austin, well, let me ask you, the audience, does anyone have a question for Austin that he could answer for you directly? I've got one. What's most surprising when you show one of your partners all that data? What is usually the light bulb that goes off for them about what you were able to pull together for them?
Yeah, I think it's the accumulating effect of all these little changes. So just focus on churn, focus on conversion rate, having those people in the lane, it's the little difference that those things make over time, and how if we look over 2 years, that can be the difference between 2,500 and 5,000 members.
Amazing. Thank you. Anyone else have a question? Can you?
Yep,
Oh
right here.
yeah. Can you meet me halfway? Thank you.
I would love to have 5,000 club customers. I'm in a smaller market. My town's about 7,000. The wash is doing well, but can you realistically expect that many club customers, or what would your expectations be on a smaller population density town as far as club members?
Yeah, so the question was, in a smaller population town, what should your expectation be? In that case, if you really are population constrained, I would think about it less in terms of the absolute number, but think about it in terms of, are we holding ourselves to a really high conversion rate? Are we seeing the trends we want in churn? Because if you're doing those things right, then you're going to end up with the highest number for whatever your market will yield.
Thanks, Lee. All the way in the back. Can you meet me halfway? Thank you.
Great presentation. My question, we had was at another session today where talking about memberships, where they said that ideally you'd have about 40 to 50% of your revenue come from memberships, which leads me to think about, is more necessarily better, right? So do you guys do any work around how much of total revenue is derived from membership in terms of identifying what's the ideal number of members?
Yeah. So those 5,000, those locations with 5,000 plus members are much more profitable than the ones that have lower membership. So, I think people focus a lot on what's this ideal split. I think that the reality is, even if you're 75% membership revenue, if you zoom out and look over the course of the year, probably 75% of the unique customers you see are still retail customers, still non-members. So there's a lot of opportunity, even if you're predominantly membership revenue. So I wouldn't worry too much about membership saturation, and think more about, are we doing everything we can to convert those retail customers? And if we don't convert them, get them to come back in sooner with loyalty or with targeted communication.
Answer your question? Yeah, right over here. I see you in the front. I'm coming over here.
Do you guys parse the data? Let's say I've got a site that doesn't have a membership lane, right? Or I don't have the sophisticated marketing that the big boys do that are focusing on the 5,000 plus. Do you have cohorts in terms of looking at the data?
Yeah, the question was, do we have cohorts? And would that be by membership size or by location count? How would you think about that? Yeah, I mean, we see some smaller operators that are clearly in this 5,000 plus bucket. So I don't think that's, and we see some larger operators that are not hitting those numbers. So I don't think it has as much to do with your footprint size. I would say to use the same benchmarks for everybody.
All right, this is our last question.
All right, last question.
Ian, give it up for Ian.
This is actually a two-part question. The conversion of customers, is that from people that are buying single washes and then convert to members, or anyone that comes to the site just to use your vacuum?
Yeah, the question is conversion. How is that calculated? So we look at all your washes. We remove your member redemptions because we're not going to resell them. And then we'll often remove your free washes as well. So it's really about opportunities versus how many you convert.
Okay, and then what technologies are you using to then identify those people?
To identify
the ones that you want to target to convert.
Yeah, so Rinse plugs into your existing point of sale, and then we have tools to help you capture contact information. So then we can see this is a retail customer. We know they've been in 3 times in the last month. They gave us their phone number because they wanted to join our loyalty program, but their usage profile might make them a good fit for membership. Should we text them an introductory offer?